my JUKI friends. My name is Alba, and welcome to my sewing studio. We're going to have another live with JUKI today, and today we're making a quick, fun project. I've done several of these with you in the past, and today we're going to be making a table runner. And this is one of my go-to projects for just dressing up my table if I'm entertaining or if I'm going to someone's house to give them a quick, easy hostess gift. What I love about this project is it uses 2 fabrics and relatively small amounts, so sometimes I even look in the remnant section of my fabric store. So let's start out with what is needed. Now today I will be sewing on the JUKI MO3000 QVP, my serger, but this can be done on any sewing machine, any serger. I've chosen my serger today because with home deck fabrics, they tend to fray a lot. So I really like that finish that the serger gives me. Now, as you could see with the finished table runner here, it has a focal fabric in the center and what looks like borders. And this is so quick and easy, you're not going to believe it. So let's go over the dimensions. Now, my first piece of fabric is 1/4 yard, 9 inches, and this is the fabric you want in the center. Now, I'm using home deck fabrics that happen to be 45 wide, so my finished table runner will be about an inch smaller than that at 44. So I tend to use wider fabrics to make bigger table runners. I've gone to my 60 wide, my 90 wide, and even the 108 quilting fabrics. So that focal fabric is 1/4 yard or 9 inches, and the back and what becomes the tips and the sides is 1/2 yard or 18 inches. And that's really it, the 2 fabrics that you need. Now, if you are going into quilting fabrics and lighter weight fabrics, you may want to interface your fabrics to give them just a heavier hand, but because I'm using home deck fabrics, I did not need to do that. So let's get started with the sewing. I am going to open up my fabrics. And what we are doing is lining up the long raw edge, so the width of your fabric, and you will be sewing that. Now I'm going to bring this over to my serger. If you are at a sewing machine, you're going to be using 1/4 inch seam allowance. I am using the seam allowance of my serger. I have my serger set up with 2 needles, so on a 4-thread safety stitch. And on my serger, I am at a stitch length of 2.5, and I'm on neutral because I'm working with woven fabrics. On your sewing machine, you will be using 1/4 inch seam allowance, and the default setting of 2 for the stitch length will work fine. Now, I'm going to serge that long edge. And of course, if you'd like to pin, go ahead. Now, as I said, I'm using that serger because I'm working with fabrics that fray, and I just like that clean finish. And in just one moment, I'll finish up that seam. Now, if your fabrics aren't completely even like mine, don't worry about that just yet. We will clean that up later on. And I am using my thread cutter on my machine. Isn't that a great feature? Now, what we're going to be doing is we have 1 skinny piece, 1 bigger piece. We are going to disregard that added bulk and we are going to sew the other side. And I'm just lining up my fabrics and getting that all ready. And I am getting ready to stitch the other side. Now on my serger, I'm aiming for a clean finish, so I'm trying really not to cut off anything. As you can see, it's very little that's being cut off. And I'm cutting my threads. And now what you will have is one long tube, and the back is kind of bigger than the front. And what we will be doing is we're going to go to our ironing station, and we're going to evenly distribute that fabric, and we're going to press these seams flat. So I'll be back as soon as I'm done ironing. Now, as you can see, my seams are ironed nice and flat, and this makes it much easier for when we turn this inside out. But now what I want to also do is, you notice that I folded this in half, and I'm matching up the seam of the focal fabric and folding it in half this way. So I have my one colored fabric and my other colored fabric facing each other. And what I'm going to do now is cut off any selvages. And you may want to do this on your cutting mat with a rotary cutter. And I'm also evening up where it was, I had that fabric was a little bit wider. So I've evened that up, I've trimmed it up so that it's nice and even. And what we will be doing now is we will be sewing this upper edge, which becomes the point. But we will be sewing from that back or the wider fabric just past our seam, maybe half an inch. And we are going to leave the opening in that focal fabric. So let's get over to the sewing. And again, I said this could be done with a sewing machine or a serger. And we are sewing through our backing fabric. And just a little bit past that seam. And we will be doing that on both sides. Now, what we have is a sewn area, and where that focal fabric is, it is open. So what we will now do is turn this inside out. And it's usually just enough to get your hand in there, or at least your fingertips, so that you could turn this inside out. Now, the backing fabric is what you're going to take the point to, and you're going to just push out that point, and look at that. That rest of that fabric just gets tucked under there, almost like a hood. Now, on your ironing of this, I do bring over a ruler, and I measure and make sure that both sides are nice and even. And I'm going to also turn, so we have that hole in that focal fabric, and I'm going to the point of that backing fabric, and that backing fabric becomes my border. And when you lay it flat, you just tuck everything under like a hood. Your seam winds up in the middle, and you have even layers of fabric on both sides. Now, I'm not going to press this out for you, but I do want to go over some embellishing tips. So you saw how quick and easy this came together. Now, for embellishments, those decorative stitches that you're always wondering, what do I do with them? This would be a great point to do decorative stitches along here, to do trims. And on this center focal area, imagine if this was leftover quilt blocks that you placed in the center. Or maybe if you did applique or embroidery. And what I think I'm trying next is with my Rico RI100, doing some custom printing and personalizing this for when I go to my friend's home on Thanksgiving. Now, please make sure to comment. I really want to see pictures of your finished table runner and just see how creative you get with that. And don't forget, the different widths of fabric will make for a longer table runner. So this is really easy to adapt to any length. Until next time, thank you so much for joining me. Bye-bye.